Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. Hope, inshallah, everyone's doing well. Let me just get the microphone plugged in. Okay. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. I hope and pray that everybody, inshallah, is doing well. Welcome back to our twice a week study of Imam al-Ghazali's text on improving prayer. Last session, we talked about how Imam al-Ghazali said, look, if you guys are worried about the presence of your heart not being the strongest suit that you have in your salah, Imam al-Ghazali said, don't worry about it. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about how to fix the lack of presence in heart. And he said, in order to understand how to fix this problem, he said there are two ways in which a person's heart can lose presence during the salah. There's two main mechanisms. He said the first are those things that are external. So the things that come from outside of the person that can distract somebody, those things that are, heard or seen. And he said these things are actually a little bit easier to fix. He said that these things are actually easier to solve. If a person has distractions in their prayer that are coming from outside of them, right? And what he means by outside is like your senses, your ears, your eyes, things that you can see, things that you can hear. He said that it's important that a person, that they put themselves in a position of focus. They pray in a room that allows them to focus. He even said things like praying in a room that's just as small as the place that you need to pray, right? So like he said, if you pray, sometimes people have like an open floor plan, or they pray in their living room, and connected to your living room is also like your TV might be there. You have a bookshelf, you have a couch, you have like some stuff on the counter, you have a kitchen. And so it's easy for somebody who's praying like an open area to become distracted when they're praying in their open area, because they're just witnessing everything, right? So it's like your eyes fall upon your fridge and all of a sudden your stomach starts rumbling, and you see a package that's on the counter and you haven't opened it yet, but you're praying asr and you're like, oh, I wonder what's in that packet. And so literally every step of the way, there is a way in which you can get distracted. So his advice was, pray in your smaller room. Maybe you have a space in your house that's small or not decorated. Pray there. He even said to pray as close as you can to a wall, because he said that the wall will cut away your the ability to see something, right? The wall will block your vision. And so he said that it's actually quite easy for a person to work on the external distractions. But he did say next, he said that the internal distractions are much more difficult. He said these ones are the ones that are much more difficult. And he said the reason why is because people, when they have internal distractions, he said that they come from man tasha'abat bihi al-humum fi adwiyat ad-dunya. So he says that they come from a person, and they're the valleys of this world. There's so much, basically what he's saying, there's so much, possibility for internal distraction. It's not just about, oh, you know what, my home is distracting, my living room is distracting. Let me pray upstairs. Let me pray in my bedroom. Let me pray somewhere where I can't be distracted. It's not as simple as that. And he says that the internal ones are even more distracting. And he says that, well, hiya ashed, they're much more difficult. And he said that the love of this world can take your minds. And he said one single thought, fi fannin wahidin, bal la yazalu wa yatiru min janib ila janib, that it can take your thoughts and it can make your thoughts even, it feels like they're flying from one place to another, from one side to the other. And so he says that he's describing the feeling of being scatterbrained during prayer. Like he's describing it. And he says, وَغَضُّ الْبَصَرِ لَا يَغْنِيهِ فِي ذَلِكَ, that lowering your gaze won't help you if your heart is distracted. فَإِنَّمَا وَقَعَ فِي الْقَلْبِ من قبل الكاف للشغل. He says that, because whatever has already befallen and stricken your heart in the prayer from even before the salah, he says it's completely and totally taken it over. It's completely and totally occupied it. So this is, admittedly much harder to resolve, is how do I resolve my prayers, my distractions when they're internal? So then he walks us through some things, and he says that, فَهَذَا طَرِيقُهُ أَنْ يَرُدَّ لِنَفْسِي قَهْرًا إِلَى فَهْمِ مَا يَقْرَأُهُ فِي الصَّلَاةِ وَيُشْغِلْ لَهَا بِهِ عَنْ غَيْرِهِ. That the first step for a person to rectify their inability to be present, and that's not because of some external thing, but because of an internal distraction, he says, is that they have to power through and to really respond with strength to their desires and to their self. The first step being they have to think about what they're reciting in the prayer. They have to think about what they are reciting in the prayer. And we talked about this, I think, a few weeks back, where I said one of the best things you can do for your salah is to get a copy of a mushaf, right? So you guys see this. This is one of my favorite copies of the Quran that anyone can have. It's called Towards Understanding the Quran. And it's an abridged version of Sheikh al-Mawdudi's Tafheem al-Quran, to understand the Quran. So he has a larger version of this. But the reason why I like this is because the English is written very well. So for people who, want to have a good translation, there's a lot of footnotes. And one of the best things that you can do for your salah, is, let's say for most of us, we're reading from Juz Amma, okay? So let's go to the end and let's look at some of the surahs that we recite most frequently. Look at how short that is. You can study this one page, and now you spent 15 minutes just reading a little bit, and there's some good footnotes here too. You spend 15 minutes just reading this one page, and you do this every day or once or twice a week, and now all of a sudden you have like a deep level of understanding of what you're reading. A lot of people think, well, in order to understand the Quran, I have to know Arabic grammar, I have to study Arabic, grammar, and I have to be proficient in it. Obviously, that'll help. Obviously, that will help. But you know what helps is when you take a book of Quran, like a mushaf or a tafsir, and you read through it and you just study it. You study it just like you study anything else. And you make it a part of your daily routine, right? While you're having your tea or your coffee in the morning, read through some Quran. While you're having your tea or your dessert at night, read through some Quran. What you'll find is that the Quran that you read, when you read it in prayer, right? قُلْ يَا أَيُّهَا الْكَافِرُونَ لَا أَعْبُدُ مَا تَعْبُدُونَ. When you read that in prayer, and now you've studied it because that surah is right here, right? Now all of a sudden, you're going to know what you're saying in prayer. And guess what? All the things that used to distract you during your salah are not going to be present anymore, because you actually know what you're reciting. Okay, so one of the best ways, so he says, يرد النفس قهرا إلى فهم ما يقرأه في الصلاة, that you have to know what you're saying in the prayer. That doesn't mean, again, that you have to be a master of Arabic. Does it help to know Arabic? Of course, absolutely. And if you should sign up for my colleague Ustad Ubaidulah's Arabic classes at Qalam, absolutely. But to start today, like right now, today, get a copy of the Quran with a good translation that you like. Go to Amazon, go to meccabooks.com, go somewhere where you can, buy a nice copy of a translation in a language that you understand, and start reading it. And I promise you that your focus will be much, much greater in prayer. So this is the copy that my wife and I, we used to read this together back when we first got engaged. You can see how old it is. You can see the binding is coming apart, right? But this copy we've had for a long time, and it's, mashallah, held up really well. So get yourself a copy of a nice translation, and whatever surahs you read in your prayer, I want you guys to be able to know the translation of that. Surah al-Fatiha for sure, right? So open up Surah al-Fatiha, and every morning just read through it a little bit and just reflect. And don't feel shy taking a pen or pencil and going to the chapters that you're reading and marking some notes, right? Don't feel shy. Like, take a little pen, and if there's an ayah that's kind of striking you and it's giving you something to think about, go ahead and circle it and write something here, right? This is something that the Sahaba used to do. The companions of the Prophet ﷺ, they used to do. You'll see in a lot of my books that I read, you'll see like just little footnotes, right? And the reason being is because when you write it down, it'll help you remember it later, inshallah. So the first thing he says, if you're having distractions internally, okay, then he says, number one, he says you gotta work, okay, and yurudda nafsa qahran, that you have to work very, very hard with strength, ila fahmi ma yaqra'uhu fi salah, into what you know in the prayer, okay? وَيُشْغِلَّهَا, sorry, bihi an ghayrihi, and occupy your mind with that instead of with other things, okay? وَيُعِينُهُ عَلَى ذَلِكَ, and things that will help you with this, or what this will do to help you, and things that this will help you with. He says, أَن يَسْتَعِدَّ لَهُ قَبْلَ التَّحْرِيمِ, that a person would be prepared for themselves before the first takbir, right? So you have to prepare yourself before the salah, okay? Another thing he says is that بِأَنَّ يُجَدِّدَ على نفسه ذكر الآخرة وموقف المناجاة وخطر المقام بين يدي الله سبحانه وتعالى. He says that this will help a person in, number one, it will help them in when they get ready for the prayer, it'll help them renew themselves. They'll feel like renewed going into the prayer. They will have a renewed sense of remembrance of the afterlife, right? Like, why am I doing this? I'm so distracted by all these things that are from this dunya, and I'm going to my prayer. And he says that when you step in front of Allah and you're about to start praying and you get yourself ready, he said this will actually prepare you in a good way, and it will renew your sense of self. Like, oh man, subhanAllah, like I've been, shopping or doing this or doing that. I've been doing all these different things all day long. Let me take 5 minutes for my akhirah, right? I've been shopping for this or working for that. Let me just take 5 minutes for my akhirah, right? And then he says the next thing, and then he says that you'll start to realize and think about, like, when you're standing and praying before God, you're going to start to realize like the seriousness of the position that you find yourself in, right? That this isn't something light. It's not like a laughing matter. When you're hanging out with your friends, you can joke around, but when you're standing in front of your CEO, it's a serious situation. Even if you know the CEO is a nice person, but when you're standing there, you take things seriously, right? And so he says, وَخَطْرِ الْمَقَامِ بَيْنَ يَدَيْ اللَّهِ سُبْحَانَهُ وَتَعَالَى. وَهَوْلِ الْمُطَالِعِ, he says, and also the danger, the danger of what is of what you're witnessing, like the fear, and the intimidation of what you're about to do, what you're witnessing. And he says, وَيُفَرِّغَ قَلْبَهُ قَبْلَ التَّحْرِيمِ بِالصَّلَاةِ عَمَّا يُهَمُّهُ فَلَا يَتْرُكَ لِنَفْسِهِ شُغْلًا يَلْتَفِتُ إِلَيْهِ خَاطِرُهُ. That he says that, and when a person does this, it will free their heart from all of the things that this person needs to free their heart from, all the things that occupy their heart before they walk to the prayer, and everything else that they desire before the prayer. They need to free their heart from that before they step to the prayer. Okay, now and then he actually gives a very interesting hadith. So he tells us this, and he shares an example of this from the life of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Like, what did the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam say about when you're praying, like how to make sure that you're focusing? So he says that you have to free things from your heart being occupied from them. And he says that the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam once said to one of his companions, Uthman bin Shayba, he says, "Inni nasitu an aqula laka an tukhammira al-qadra alladhi fil bayt." So he said that I forgot to tell you that I wanted you to cover the pots before in the room, right? That you should cover those pots. فإنه لا ينبغي أن يكون في البيت شيء يشغل الناس عن صلاتهم. That because when a person's praying in their home or wherever they're praying, they should never put themselves in a situation where their prayers are distracted by anything in their house. So the Prophet ﷺ essentially was teaching this companion that, when we prayed, I forgot to ask you that you should cover everything up because it's easy for a person to be distracted. If you left like a plate of food or like whatever, and there's a fly in the house, and let's say that like you're going to pray Maghrib, and you're taking a break from your dinner, you're going to go pray, and you see the fly, like you're going to think to yourself, oh man, and you see the fly onto your food, right? You have like cheeseburger and fries, and there's a fly just sitting there. You're going to be distracted. You know what I mean? Your mind is already gone now. Okay. So what he said is like, take every precaution necessary pre-salat. This is the Prophet ﷺ, to make sure that you don't have that distraction that's bothering you. Okay. And he says, فَهَذَا طَرِيقُ تَسْكِينِ الْإِفْكَارِ, that this is the path that a person has to take in order to give their thoughts peace, right? To calm their mind. But he says, فَإِنْ كَانَ لَا يُسْكِنُ هَائِجُ الْإِفْكَارِهِ بِهَذَا الدَّوَاءِ الْمُسَكِّنِ, but if a person is unable to calm the agitation, like the waves of crashing agitation in their mind before or in this method, then he says فَلَا يُنْجِيهِ إِلَّا الْمُسْهِلِ, that nothing will save them. And Sheikh Abdel Nasser, when I was reading this with him, he gave me a great translation. He said al-mushil means like a surgical procedure. He said that nothing will save them except like a really, really delicate surgical procedure. الذي يقمع مادة الداء من عماق العروق, that the surgical procedure is to extract the disease from the very most inner veins of a person, right? Like this disease, if none of these things that he mentioned works, he says, then this disease is very deep rooted inside of us. He says, then you have to like go very, very deep into the spiritual anatomy to extract this disease. Okay, he says, وَهُوَ أَنْ يَنْظُرَ فِي الْأُمُورِ الشَّاغِلَةِ الصَّارِفَةِ لَهُ عَنْ إِحْضَارِ الْقَلْبِ. And he said that, and this is for a person to see the matters of what are the things that distract and occupy them from having present heart in their prayer. وَلَا شَكْ أَنَّهَا تَعُدُّ إِلَى مُهِمَّتِهِ. That, and what they have to do is they have to start by returning back to what are those things that are important to them. The things that distract us in prayer, more often than not, are things that are important to us. When something's really important to us and it distracts us in prayer, those are the things that occupy our mind. He says, وَإِنَّهَا إِنَّمَا صَارَتْ مُهِمَّاتٍ لِشَهْوَاتِهِ. And those things that are important to a person start to develop into a person's desires. So let's say, for example, that somebody, business is really important for them. Then all of their desires start to revolve around what's important to them, their business. If somebody has a family and their family is important to them, all their desires start to revolve around their family, right? If somebody has a hobby or, some sort of pastime that's important to them, like barbecuing or like playing sports or exercising, all of their desires are going to be tied to that. So he says that you can basically find out what's important to you by looking at your desires. If you look at your desires, you'll find what's important for you, okay? فَيُعَاقِبَ نَفْسَهُ بِالنُّزُوعِ. And the only way to free your soul is by removing عن تلك الشهوات. You have to remove these. You have to remove these desires. وَقَطْعِ تِلْكَ الْعَلَائِقِ. You have to remove these attachments that you have. فَكُلُّ مَا يُشْغِلُهُ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِ فَهُوَ ضَدُّ دِينِهِ. That everything that occupies your mind and your heart during prayer, even if it's permissible, even if it's something that's not bad, everything that takes away your mind and your heart during your prayer, is something that is going to be in opposition to your faith. وَجُنْدُ إِبْلِيسَ عَدُوِّهِ, and becomes a warrior of shaitan, the one who is your enemy. فَإِمْسَاكُهُ أَضُرُّ عَلَيْهِ مِنْ إِخْرَاجِهِ, that, and quieting that thing is something that is absolutely necessary upon you in order for you to remove it from yourself, to remove this horrible disease from yourself. Okay, and he says that so then he says فَيَتَخَلَّصُ مِنْهُ بِإِخْرَاجِهِ, that, and only through its removal will you be free of it. And okay, so this is all like very theoretical Imam Ghazali stuff. Let me give you the narration now that he gives. كما روي أنه صلى الله عليه وسلم لما لبس الخميس التي آتى بها أبو جهم وعليهما علم وعليها علم وصلى بها. So he said, just like the time the Prophet ﷺ received a shirt as a gift from one of the companions whose name was Abu Jahm. And he said that Abu Jahm gave him this gift. And he said, and on this gift were like some designs, some like emblems and designs. And he said that وَصَلَّى بِهَا, and he prayed in it. The Prophet ﷺ was wearing this new gift, this shirt, and he prayed in it. وَنَزَعَهَا بَعْدَ صَلَاتِهِ وَقَالَ, that he took off the shirt after his prayer. And he said, alayhi salam, اذهبوا بها إلى أبي جهم, go please, and can you guys return this particular gift back to Abu Jahm. فإنها الهتني, that because آنفا عن صلاتي, that because this shirt that I had, it distracted me in my prayer. It distracted me in my prayer. وَأَتُونِي بِإِنْبِجَانِيَةِ أَبِي جَهْمٍ. So he asked him then instead to give him a simple cloak. So basically the Prophet ﷺ said, I appreciate your gift, but this particular gift is one that is difficult for me to pray in because it's distracting. So can I just ask for like a plain sheet, like a very simple cloak instead? So he swapped out the gift basically, right? But why did he swap out the gift? Because it distracted him in prayer. So the Prophet ﷺ was like, he took prayer seriously enough for him to say that, you know what, like this article of clothing, if it distracts me in prayer, like I'm just not going to wear it during prayer, right? I'm just not going to wear it. وَأَمَرَ رَسُولُ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ بِتَجْدِيدِ شِرَاكِ نَعْلِهِ, that the Prophet ﷺ, he asked, or one time he had a strap on his sandal replaced, like the strap was replaced. It was old and he got a new one. ثُمَّ نَظَرَ إِلَيْهِ فِي الصَّلَاةِ, and while he was praying, it caught his attention. Okay, إِذْ كَانَ جَدِيدًا, the one that was new. فَأَمَرَ أَنْ يَنْزَعَ مِنْهَا, that, and so he asked that the new strap be taken off. وَيَرُدَّ الشِّرَاكُ الْخَلَقُ, that, and he asked for the old one to be put back on, because the new one, it distracted him, so the old one put it back on. كان صلى الله عليه وسلم قد اتذى نعلان فعجبه حسنها, that the Prophet ﷺ one time was gifted some sandals, and he was so taken aback by how beautiful they were. فسجد وقال تواضعت لربي عز وجل لا يمقتني, that I humbled myself before Allah so that He doesn't hold me to give me a consequence for this. ثم خرج بها فدفعها إلى أول سائل لقيه, that he then took those sandals, those brand new sandals that were given to him, and he gave them to the first person who was in need, the first one that he met. He gave it to that person. ثم أمر عليا رضي الله عنه يشتري له نعلين, that he asked then immediately Ali radiallahu anh to buy him a pair of simple sandals. Okay, so summarizing that going back and forth and trying to translate it and such, he got a new set of sandals that were very nice, and they were so distracting for him during prayer that he actually sought forgiveness from Allah, and then he went and gave them to somebody, and he asked Ali radiallahu anh to go and purchase him a pair of sandals that were very simple, that wouldn't distract him during prayer. So what's the lesson here? The lesson here is that prayer is the highest priority. And we have so many things that Allah Ta'ala has given us that are permissible, that are things that are not problematic in Islam. But you don't want to put yourself in a situation where the things that Allah has given you become a means for your low quality in prayer. So what did the Prophet ﷺ do? The Prophet ﷺ, he didn't forbid people from wearing nice clothes. He didn't forbid people from having nice shoes. But he reminded us through his actions that this is what you have to prioritize. And if you don't prioritize it, and it does in fact become a deep distraction for you, then you may have to think about some serious changes, right? Whether it's giving it away, that's your choice. Whether it's praying in a different room. Some people have like a certain outfit that they pray in because they know that it's a very simple garment and it's something that won't distract them, etc. But you see here the level of dedication the Prophet ﷺ had to making sure that his prayer was never threatened by anything, even things that are not impermissible, of course, right? Things that are impermissible, of course, that they're already impermissible, but he never ever let his prayer be threatened. So this is an important lesson, inshallah. We'll continue and finish the chapter next Tuesday as we continue with these lessons. I hope and pray that Allah Ta'ala gives us the good and healthy prioritization of our prayer over other things. And I pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grants us beautiful prayers as we try to perfect them and work on them, that they bring us closer and closer to him. Ameen ya Rabbil Alameen. Barakallahu feekum, everybody. Take care. Sorry for going a little bit over time today. I'll see you guys on Tuesday at the same time, inshallah, 5 p.m. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.